Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Chad Toprak, the director of Freeplay, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Freeplay hosts and broadcasts from the stolen lands of the Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, where stories have been shared and games have been played since time immemorial. We pay our respects to elders past and present, and to anyone watching who has a connection to the world's oldest living culture. Sovereignty was never ceded, and the violence of the colonial project is still ongoing. So welcome to the session, A Crypto Christmas Carol. Joining us is Jonathon Tree and Andrew Gleeson. Jonathon is a composer, game developer, and a doom scroller. When he isn't filtering and mangling sounds into unrecognizable messes, he's likely hooting and hollering at men in shorts running around with a ball. After spending the last few years in the tech world, he left in the hope of living a life free of X as a service and blockchain business models. In 2021, he was cursed by an evil warlock to have to read about cryptocurrency in the news constantly for the foreseeable future. Andrew Gleeson is a self-taught video game developer and pixel artist living in Melbourne. From a young age, he's worked on commercially successful titles, lectured at RMIT, and occasionally releases small games for fun. He uses Game Maker Studio for all his current projects. You'll likely spot him wearing a striped shirt and a beanie yelling about crypto. Please make John and Andy welcome, and I'll hand it over to you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our talk. This is going to be pretty intense. We've got a lot that we want to cover. So hopefully everyone is all strapped in and ready to go. As Chad said, I'm Andrew Gleeson, and John Tree is here with me as well, and we're going to tell you, we'll basically almost yell at you about crypto for the next hour.
No time for questions at the end.
No time for questions. Shout outs to everyone watching from the zone. Shout out to my beloved Cecile, and we should just get this underway. Let's go.
Okay, part one. I really don't know why we stuck with the name of Crypto Christmas Carol. It's June, so probably a bad call on our part. We're going to start in, as you saw, Alamogordo, New Mexico. Specifically, we're going to go back to 1983 September. That's where the landfill is right now. I'm not sure where it was at the time. I'm pretty sure it was there. Atari reportedly dumped 10 to 20, depending on who you ask to, semi-trailers worth of games, consoles, and that sort of thing into the landfill. Within the month, like weeks later, kids at the town had heard about it. They were jumping the fence and stealing all the consoles from the tip. Shout out to them. Fantastic. By October, they had to concrete over it to stop them from doing that. This was the sort of the widely publicized event that people talk about when they talk about the video game crash of 1983, attributed to a lot of different things: oversupply, lack of consumer confidence, mass production, all that sort of stuff. The next slide is a picture of that site, excavated in 2014 by some filmmakers, funded by Microsoft. I think the idea of just dumping video games and consoles and all that sort of stuff betrays a certain attitude, that it's not art, it's not a piece of shared history or anything like that. It's a commodity, and when it no longer has any monetary value, it goes into the junk. We feel that attitude is a bit of an issue. It's a problem, and followed to its logical conclusion, it's immensely predatory and destructive. We're going to spend the next hour showing you how and why, and we're going to go back again to the 1930s. So the Great Depression happened. Unemployment was really, really high. I think 33% in some places, and money was scarce. This is the best time to introduce coin-operated gambling machines, such as pinball. Entertainment, such as pinball. There was no flippers on these machines. It was just pull the plunger and away you go. It blew up. It was immensely popular. Operators, as they were called, which were basically just coin-operated entertainment landlords, would buy these machines and set them up in profitable locations. Ads for the machines were plastered everywhere, but they weren't ads for you to play them. They were ads to the pinball landlords to buy them and how great they were at making them money. But pinball wasn't just about the machine. It was also about the culture and the attitude and everything surrounding the machine. Specifically, that people would bet on the outcomes of games, and venue owners would give away prizes for high scores, allow you to cash out your balls or your remaining games for prizes as well. So it was effectively gambling. These are some folks having fun and definitely not gambling. A lot of cities at the time, a lot of states at the time, they weren't having it. There was some moral panic around kids being corrupted by pinball machines. They should be going to church instead. There was some people saying, there was it's unregulated gambling, and it's just linked to organized crime, which to a degree probably was. None of these really stuck though. In 1941, America entered World War II. The mayor of New York at the time said, quote, that it is infinitely preferable the metal in these evil contraptions be manufactured into arms and bullets, which can be used to destroy our foreign enemies. So, supply and demand, no mismatch there, but market forces gave way to imperialism and nationalism, and pinball machines were banned in the 1940s in many states. Come 1970s, they were coming back. They added flippers in the late 1940s and 1950s. It didn't really help them. In 76 in New York, there was a famous case where Roger Sharp, pictured there, played called shots on a pinball machine. He said, I'm going to hit it up there. He would hit it up there, make it in one shot. That is the story goes, that that's what convinced New York City councillors to unban pinball. And actually what would happen there was that New York City was bankrupt. They needed money. They could make money off of the taxes on the returns and the revenues these things would make, and the pinball lobby was set up the whole thing. But that was kind of it for pinball anyway, because in the 70s we were seeing something else come to the fore, which is arcade machines. Throughout the 80s and the 90s, they rose to prominence. And right out of the gate, and thanks to some of the archival efforts of a lot of people, the manuals and the trade publications from this era are still available, and you can tell that the industry really weren't hiding their motivations. So pictured here on the left and in the center are two pages from manuals from arcade machines. The one on the left is Street Fighter 2. The one in the middle is a light gun game called Area 51. The language these things use is quite telling. Optimize your profits, keep the quarters flowing, maximize your profits. That games should be 2.5 minutes long. That's the optimal time to get the most out of the machine and to ensure a player feels satisfied. In fact, the one in the middle there shows some built-in statistics and analytics that these machines had that showed you how long the machine was idle for, how long it was being played, whether it was just one player or two players, to get it, tweaked and optimized as much as possible. And I think this shows a big blind spot that we have for nostalgia, especially around these games, is that these games weren't hard because they were built to be hard. They were hard because they were built to make money, and being hard made money. That's just the way it worked. The one on the right there is an ad for a pinball machine, which was still around at the time. The pinball machine was hooked by a company called Data East, and their ads are all like this. They're using terminology like hit the jackpot, treasure trove of quarters, set sail on a sea of quarters, watch your profits soar as hooked gamers drop coin after coin. So that's an ad from a trade publication. This trade publication is called Playmeter. It was really popular. Ran until about 2006, I think. And in 1983, they did a piece on grey area games. Grey area games were, as I found out, essentially video poker and video lottery games. They were concerned that it would make the industry look bad, that it was unregulated, that there were ties to organised crime, that they were showing up in arcades, not just bars where adults were, that kids would be able to play them. Quote, a video card game is worse than a slot machine. People know a slot machine is positively a gambling machine, but a video card game is borderline. A video game with subtle hints of a gambling game. This was 1983. By 1992, the magazine were publishing ads for these games. By that time, through lobbying, industry lobbying, and the potential tax revenue from the returns on these machines, grey area games were legitimized. They introduced taxes on the earnings that fell in line with taxes on regular gambling stuff. On paper, this is a tax on the people who own these machines, but effectively it actually disproportionately affects the people who use them, who, surprise, turn out to be people on the lower end of the income spectrum. So, thinking about it, what we've looked at so far, video games as commodities to the industry don't really have too much value beyond the monetary. If they're no longer valuable, get rid of them. In both the 1930s and the 1990s, pinball arcade machine operators resorted to gambling to further increase their profits. So they operated and thrived in that legislation-free grey area. Gamblification, like carcinization, but not as cool. Carcinization is the process of convergent evolution, which says that things that aren't crabs tend to evolve into a crab. Oh, we're having issues with our audio. Try that again.
I'll try that again.
Oh, well,
doesn't matter.
You get the picture.
Look. The spy turns into a crab.
That's true.
Okay, cool. We're swapping over to now. That's our point. Now I'm going to start talking about something else that was happening in the 80s, which was baseball cards. Oh, yeah, the audio cut out again. Hold on a sec.
Try again.
Yeah. All right. Story time. I want to tell you a story about baseball. Actually, it's about baseball cards, but it stars one of baseball's greatest players, Honus Wagner. Heard of him? Probably haven't. In fact, you probably haven't even heard of baseball. Doesn't matter. Honus Wagner was one of the greatest baseball players. Not only was he one of the best shortstops the league had ever seen at the time, he was a great hitter, a great fielder, and could steal bases like no one else could. Other players feared he had no weakness, and he knew how much he was worth. Here he is on a baseball card, the T206 Honus Wagner. It's widely regarded as the holy grail of baseball cards. It's one of the oldest, rarest cards you can find. Only around 58 of them exist that we know about. And the reason why it's so rare is back in 1909 when these cards were printed and sold on the backs of cigarette boxes and sold to kids. It said that Wagner stopped card printers from using his likeness and forced them to stop printing the card. It said that either he didn't want to participate in the selling of cigarettes to kids, or maybe he was just trying to simply negotiate a better license fee. Probably weren't paying him enough, but no one knows, but that's kind of the story. Fast forward back to the 1980s again, and baseball card collecting was booming, becoming an industry unto itself. Returns on investments were generating further within Wall Street. Wall Street Journal were referring to baseball cards as better investments than stocks, calling them inflation hedges and nostalgia futures. Cards were being sold at prestige auction houses, and card grading companies were formed to become authorities in judging the authenticity and quality of the cards. Fake baseball cards were everywhere, and card graders capitalized on collectors wanting to know that what they were buying was the real deal. One of these guys is Bill Mastro. He's one of the biggest dealers in sports memorabilia, and he manages to get his hands on one of these T206 Honus Wagner cards, and he got it for a bargain. And then in less than a year, he was able to sell it for 4 times the price that he paid, at like $110,000 when he sold it. Then in 91, it appears at Sotheby's, which is one of these famous auction houses, as part of a collection of hundreds of items of sports memorabilia, and the Wagner cards there too. And it gets sold to ice hockey superstar Wayne Gretzky for $450,000, which makes headlines everywhere. And Gretzky wasn't even a card collector. Due to all this excitement around cards, he thought this was a good investment. And Mastro was also here too. He happens to be the guy running the auction, auctioning the same card that he sold 4 years ago. The audio cut, that's fine. So what everyone now calls the Gretzky Wagner was also the first card to be officially graded by this new card grading company called the Professional Sports Authority, or the PSA. And they're even still around today, the PSA. And they gave this card a score of 8. They said it was a near mint condition card, which is incredibly impressive considering how old it is. You wouldn't have to grab it right off the printing press and store it in a box for 80 years for it to kind of still have that kind of value. So with all this frenzy around baseball cards, it was short-lived. 3 years later, the baseball players' strike of 1994 happened. 948 games were cancelled, the World Series was cancelled, and demand for baseball cards just fell off a cliff. And Gretzky was lucky enough to be able to sell the card for just as much as he pretty much paid, and he sells it to Walmart, who uses it as part of a raffle contest to try to boost card sales. Anyway, the card finds its way back again to another auction house, and Mastro is desperately trying to get the card back. But unfortunately for him, he gets outbid, and he is unable to get this card back, the card that he initially sold. Controversy continues to build around the card. Some suspect that it's been altered. The edges kind of look trimmed to remove any wavy edges it would have once had, and the wavy edges would have reduced its grade. And altered cards were considered sacrilege to collectors. If the card was altered, it may as well be a fake. And people were trying to compare photos and trying to see, and people were kind of suspicious of this card. How could it be so good? It looks fake to some people with a keen eye. But if this card was fake or even altered, what would it mean to this whole sports memorabilia industry? People don't want to think about that stuff, so they just want to believe in the PSA. They want to believe in Mastro. They want to believe this card's real. But it turns out in 2013, way later, after a federal investigation into Bill Mastro pleads guilty to fraud. He used his own employees to shield bid in auctions to jack up the price of cards, and he even admits to altering the card. He cut it. He cut it when he first got it, and he didn't tell anyone when he sold it and when he auctioned it off. And the PSA grader even admits that they knew it was fake when they graded it. So this long-running scandal that Mastro had had the whole sports industry, the sports memorabilia industry into question. What was the true value of these cards? And if the PSA were the authority, and they were making a huge profit from grading people's junk that would otherwise just sit in the attic, and if the first card they graded was a scam, what the heck? Anyway, that would never happen today. The end. That's the end of the story.
Yeah, that's fine. It's probably never going to happen again. That's all right.
Never happen again. Anyway, moving on.
So we're going to talk about Magic the Gathering. In 1993, around the same time as that baseball strike, Wizards of the Coast released Magic the Gathering. I'm not going to talk too much about Magic the Gathering. I'm just going to talk about one card in particular. called the Black Lotus. It became incredibly popular, and it was banned banned from tournament play about a year after the game came out, just because it was too overpowered. People were stacking the deck with it. It was ridiculous, right? In 1995, 2 years after the game came out, 1 year after it was banned, sold for around $25, which is about $46 with inflation, right? 1999 sold for $350, around $556 with inflation. 1999, Wizards of the Coast were acquired by Hasbro, and they were tapped on the shoulder to lead the Pokemon trading card game series. Now, this starts to form a similar sort of we see a similar sort of pattern here forming that we did with baseball cards, right? Where there's two groups of people who participate in this. There's a group that can afford to and buy and hunt down these valuable cards, and ultimately they're the source of the price behind these cards. And there's a group of people who don't do that, who play the game, who collect the cards because they like the sport, right? This split is reinforcing, because people sort of groups of what they call sharks will bring other people into the fold, teach them the knowledge, all that sort of stuff, right? The power dynamic between these two groups might present as being dishonest about the value of a card, buying at less than market price, or buying up boosters in a particular location or in particular locations, making it harder for groups who can't who want to play to buy these cards. So I managed to track down a quote from an ex Magic the Gathering shark. This is from an article on a website called Tapped Out, and you can check it out after the talk. I'll read it out because it's quite telling. Why did I do it all? Greed, mostly. I wanted more. I don't have a problem with that. At the end of the day, I'm capitalizing on other people not knowing what they have. They're consciously making the decision to hand me their cards in exchange for my cards. If they look up the price later and feel bad about it, that's on them. Caveat emptor. Caveat emptor being Latin for buyer beware, effectively. The idea is that, hey, I'm here tricking you, and I'm here manipulating you, and I'm here lying to you, but it's kind of your fault. You should have checked it out. So to wrap up this section here, we kind of looked at secondary markets, right? Markets that are run alongside the actual primary market. They form in response to scarcity and perceived rarity. That sharking and other predatory behavior crops up in these markets. It just seems to just happen. And that marketification is, again, similar to gamification, like carcinization, but not cool, right? So these things trend towards this. So now we're going to look at something else, something that is instead of communities exploiting each other, it's companies exploiting communities. This is going to be online communities, right? So they start small, web forums, BBS, all that sort of stuff, and then eventually grow to the social media we know and love today. They're constantly looking for new ways to monetize their users, to show, hey, investors, look at all this great growth that we have. So let's have a look at a couple of these communities really, really quickly. Not this one.
Okay.
Not this one. I don't want to.
No. Okay. No.
Anger the Club Penguin fans.
No,
We're going to talk about Neopets. I'm happy to anger those fans. Launched in 1999, it's a virtual pet website, very popular with kids. You earn Neo points to buy items for your pets, and you play all sorts of fun games. These games tended to be some were benign, but some were gambling. Not a good look. So that wasn't the way that they made money. The way that Neopets made money was native advertising. They sold ad space to Atari, there's that name, Coca-Cola, General Mills, all that sort of stuff, and they'd create native branded content. Well, there's this thing that came around in the 90s called COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, that says, hey, you can't collect data about kids under the age of 13 without parental consent. Anyone who's used Neopets knows that you had to give parental consent, right? Like there was a form that you faxed off, which is bizarre, but they did it anyway. So let's take a look at some of this stuff. So on the right there, you'll see the Cereal Adventures World, which was General Mills cereal branded adventure world. You could play all sorts of games after their different cereal brands and whatnot. There was a movie cinema where you could watch trailers for the latest films, which is great for companies like Disney and DreamWorks. You can get all sorts of demographic info from that sort of thing. There were marketing surveys that users could participate in order to get Neopoints to buy items for their pets. Some of the questions were, when did you last visit Walmart? And are you aware there's a new Power Rangers DVD? And then you played branded games as well. So like some of the ones you see there, one of them was called Limited 2 Mix and Match. Limited 2 is a US clothing chain targeted at tweens. A quote from a Wired article in 2005 from a girl who was playing these games about that game I just mentioned says, quote, "It's got good advertising and fun colors and shows you things you might want to buy in real life." But selling off digital ad space and real estates to brands was not enough. In 2007, they introduced NeoCash. It's after the conversion, which is a big Neopets event. Go ask someone from Neopets what the conversion is. It was also called Nick Cash, as in Nickelodeon. Same cash, same funny money, same digital currency, because at this point, Neopets was owned by Viacom. You would buy items with this Nick Cash, NeoCash, in a new marketplace called the NC Mall. It was available to purchase as a prepaid card as well. Those prepaid cards you may have seen in supermarkets, in pharmacies and all that sort of stuff, right near where all the snacks are down low where the kids can grab them. So we're going to look at another community now, Gaia Online. Started as an anime link list and a forum in 2003, avatar-based social media, very popular with millennials, so slightly different demographic, right? At this point, millennials were like early, mid-teens kind of thing. And we know what millennials love. B-movie. Movie tie-ins, film tie-ins. So there were...
Mall Cop.
Paul Blart. Massive amount of film tie-ins. B-movie, Paul Blart, Alice in Wonderland, Harry Potter, Pirates of the Caribbean. The way that you got these items was like doing weird quests and stuff. They partnered with brands as well, and one of those brands was Macy's. Macy's, for anyone who doesn't know, is an American department store, kind of like a Myer or a David Jones in Australia. They have their own private label, the private brands for fashion and clothes and stuff. So these items are available within Gaia Online, and you could buy them using, I think, just regular gold. The description of the items had the actual name of the item at Macy's and also the price in US dollars of the item at Macy's. So you could kind of cosplay as your Gaia avatar, which is really fun. In 2007, Gaia Online, much like Neopets, introduces Gaia Cash, which is a premium currency purchased with real money. You could earn it through watching ads and doing surveys, much like Neopets as well. In the late 2000s, Gaia Online saw about $1 million US per month in item sales with that premium currency. Take a breath. All right. Wrap up this section here. Neopets and Gaia Online resorted to native advertising to embed their clients' products into the cultures of these forming communities, right? For money. And both Neopets and Gaia Online implemented these funny money currencies for money, right? So this is like this is monetization to the max, right? We're trying to monetize our user base as much as possible through whatever strategies we possibly can. Like carcinization, but not as cool.
Cool. All right, cool. Now I'm going to hand over to me for part 2, and I'm going to talk about some of the games that we see today. We know that Neopets and Gaia Online don't really exist anymore in the same way that they do. So let's talk about games that exist today. But first I want to show everyone this Ushi's video, just as a little breather after that little section.
This stuff may have pushed one of us over the edge. So
we're going to destroy it.
We're going to destroy it because it's just not worth it. You ask yourself, what is a life worth? Is it worth what money? We don't know. So is it worth this? It's not. So to the people that bullied us and they want to buy this thing because they want it, well, this is what I say to them. It won't cut you. It's done. You can't buy it. I'm going to destroy it. I said that to people, and then they messaged Melissa and they bullied her again and said that she was selfish for not selling it. Well, the world's got to stop this stuff because people get hurt and it goes further and further.
Cool.
Go off, King.
Go off, King. True words have never been said. R.I.P. Simba Ushi.
This stuff may have...
Hold on. Okay, now I want to talk about World of Warcraft. If we're not familiar with World of Warcraft, I don't know, whatever, it doesn't matter. It released in 2004, and it's like MMO. So it was a game where you could trade items with friends and collect gold, level up, go on quests, that kind of stuff. Whatever the usual things. I'm not going to get into it too much, but what I am going to talk about is gold farming. Nearly 1 month after release, people started seeing items being sold on eBay, and gold farming was kind of pretty prevalent. And this is kind of where we start to see the the gray area between digital items and paying for them with real money, which kind of comes to define this whole era. And with this whole conversation about digital money or digital currency, digital property, I guess, there's a big conversation around who owns this stuff. This is one of my favorite quotes from John Locke. Well, it's not my favorite quote, but this is a quote that I've added for this talk. Basically kind of arguing that if you invest time in getting or putting work into getting this item, then, you know, it's yours. You should be able to do whatever you want with that. This is kind of the kind of ideology that gold farmers would use in order to try to argue that what they're doing was legit and would have value, and what they're doing is like kind of normal and should be accepted and embraced by everyone. That you can play games, earn stuff, and that's yours to do with whatever you want. Like the dev shouldn't be able to tell you what to do or control everything. But you know, but again, who owns it? Like the developer can kind of remove that item, change how much it's worth, get rid of it at any time. Players agree to end user license agreements and EULAs, which waive any legal rights they have to the stuff that they buy. And this even comes up when we buy games on Steam, buy a lot of digital games on stores and stuff like that. We've come to understand that we're not really buying a copy of the game, we're buying a license to that. We don't necessarily own it. We can't sell it or get rid of it. And to some people, this kind of makes them a little bit anxious, which is understandable to some extent. But we're going to look into how, if you were allowed to sell this stuff, how it kind of gets into a weird place. Because if players did own what they collected, it would have weird implications for developers. If players could make money off what they were selling and could cash out the stuff that they were using, then it would have weird implications for developers if they actually embrace this stuff. And weird implications for society as a whole. Like people would perceive games as ways to make money and become work, essentially, which is extremely weird and not what games should even be remotely be. So I want to talk about this guy named Brock Pierce. He is very relevant to this talk, and I want you all to remember his name. We probably could have made this whole talk around him and would have filled the hour easily. Anyway, I'll keep moving on. He's a child actor, and he was playing games in his teens. He was playing EverQuest, which is kind of pre-World of Warcraft. But he wasn't interested in acting anymore, and he became more interested in the corporate world. He wanted to start his own company and get involved in that kind of whole that whole world, basically. So at 17, he starts like a pre-YouTube internet TV network, which kind of lasts for a couple years. Things happen which I won't get into, and then in 2001 that business closes, and he starts Internet Gaming Entertainment, or IGE. And here's a cool photo of him as a banana. This is him in a Gushers commercial when he was like a teenager. Cool. So IGE.com, if you've never heard of this before, this is like a digital item gray market. Not really a black market. It's not illegal. You're not selling drugs or anything like that. You're just selling digital items. This is kind of thing where devs didn't allow this stuff, but you weren't really considered a criminal. You were just breaching the agreement that you would make with the developer, which is that you can't sell this stuff. It released in 2001. It exploded in 2004 with the World of Warcraft, and this kind of introduces this industrial scale gold farming. In a year, IGE was making like $8 million a month, and were hiring or contracting workers in Hong Kong and China, basically a source of cheap labor to basically spend all this time farming items in all these games, running bots to kind of help them maximize how much gold and items they were collecting, so that they could then sell their stuff to IGE, and then IGE would be a marketplace where players could then go and buy all these items. And this actually had weird implications for World of Warcraft in particular, amongst other games. A lot of players didn't like these kind of bots and gold farmers in their games. It was pretty disruptive. Like some areas of the world would be filled with bots, and bots were flooding the chat with ads and all this kind of other weird stuff going on. And and the developers didn't like this either. They kind of felt this was kind of risking their kind of profit like model. Basically, Blizzard was encouraging people to subscribe in order to play World of Warcraft, and they were intent on making people play as long as possible. If people could buy items and skip a bunch of content or skip a bunch of playtime, then this would kind of, people would be getting to the end quicker, and that wasn't good for Blizzard. They didn't like that. But IG continues. It becomes pretty popular with a bunch of people, I guess. They're making a bunch of money, and Brock really wants to make this thing legit. He wants IG to become a real thing that developers come to embrace the idea that players want to buy these items and just skip playing the game. So he really wanted to. So in order to do this, he tried to hire a bunch of senior executives from Microsoft and EA. He felt like maybe because he was a kind of a young adult, people wouldn't take him as seriously. So if he had a bunch of senior people on board, maybe they could kind of help persuade the developers to be on board. And he gets some guy from Goldman Sachs, and he gets $60 million in venture capital, and uses this to negotiate with Blizzard. He never came close. Blizzard hated him from the beginning, but in 2006 they started to crack down on gold farming. A lot of bots started to disappear. A lot of accounts were getting banned. A lot of stuff was just gone, and IG was losing millions of dollars as a result of that. And basically, it didn't last very long. IG ended up closing shortly after that, or they ended up selling off their business to someone else who maintained it after that, and Brock Pierce moved on. And that Goldman Sachs guy was Steve Bannon, which is really interesting to note. But I'll move on. So after that, Pierce was still around in this kind of space of digital items, but he was mostly focused on Korea, where less regulations were involved, or there's a lot more friendly attitude towards item trading. He ends up starting Playcino in 2006, which were making free-to-play Facebook gambling games. The idea at the time were that because of the global financial crisis, companies were kind of betting on the regulation around online gambling to be reduced. As we said before, gambling is a really great source of generating tax revenue. So if legislation were to be made more lax so that companies could make gambling games and do gambling online, then they would make a whole lot of money. So they were doing this on Facebook and just getting people just to play gambling games with play money, which is, if people are gambling with play money and they can't cash out, it's not considered gambling under the law, which is kind of an important point. But they were trying to build an audience early, kind of prime them to be used to gambling online so that eventually one day they can start gambling with real money. So key points from here, ownership of non-physical items, it's pretty iffy. Like, what do you control? What do you have access to? There's lots of anxiety around that, but it'd be weird if you had to make legislation go into that direction. If you could sell it, that there's all kinds of complicated stuff which we can't really get into. But because of this anxiety around digital items, companies and markets will form to cash in on this and use libertarian rhetoric to kind of justify that. All right, I'll pass over to John.
Let's check in with the card speculation market. This year, so January, Black Lotus, the Magic the Gathering card, sold for just over $500,000 US, and a T206 Honus Wagner, not that one, a different one, sold for $3.7 million US just last month in May. So the secondary market there is doing a-okay. On to another secondary market, Team Fortress 2. As I understand it, it's a game about trading hats. Initially, you could only trade them back and forward amongst players. There was no mechanism to buy and sell them. So naturally, one formed. Sharking was rampant. Surprise, surprise, as we've already talked about. But they used technology. Sharks used the Steam API to see into people's inventories and figure out who were the easiest marks. So they would look for people with low playtime in Team Fortress 2, but high value items. If the person who they had picked as their mark wasn't really receptive and the value of their account was high enough, well, they would just break into the account, siphon everything out of the inventory, and away they go. In November 2012, just jump back to that previous slide.
Sorry.
November 2012, there was a weird event that happened that someone on a forum discovered. I think it was user Base 64 on the Steam Rep forum. Discovered that large amounts of Team Fortress 2 keys to loot boxes, were being purchased that were then being exchanged for earbuds being this fixed commodity that was traded in Team Fortress 2, because there was only a limited amount of them. The earbuds were then being sold for cash. But that whole trading cycle was like losing money, right? Like they'd spent like X amount for the keys, and by the end of it, they had X 0.8 worth of X. Like they had lost money. The reason why they were happy to do that is because the money that they end up with, while they have less of it, is washed, is laundered. It's harder to trace. In December 2012, surprise, surprise, Valve launches the beta for the community marketplace, which enables users to buy and sell items, keys included, for Steam Wallet credit, money that can't leave the Steam store. TF2 item secondary market still kind of around, but this is where it starts to go downhill. Next one, Valve, same company, same issue. CSGO. In 2013, they introduced tradable and sellable skins. They also have keys just like TF2. In 2019, Valve themselves announced that nearly all key purchases on the community marketplace are fraud sourced. Same thing. They're using these key purchases to wash, usually probably like credit card fraud or something like that. But thankfully, that's all of the bad stuff that was going on in CS:GO. But no, that's not true at all. We had skin gambling. It was a multi-billion-dollar industry. For anyone who doesn't know the term skin gambling, of course, it's pretty weird. I can't imagine who would know it. Skin gambling is effectively those skins that you had with CSGO weapon skins, like a cool looking gun or whatever, and it has like weird patterns on it or something. We associate a monetary value to this. Real money, right? So effectively what happened was these websites appeared that, again, secondary market trading, allowing people to buy and sell and swap this stuff, but also to gamble with it as though it were currency. It became a multi-billion-dollar industry filled with scams. There were slot machines that would like CSGO slot machine websites that would partner with CSGO gambling, skin gambling influencers who would stream their slot machines, but that slot machine would have like rigged odds so that people who would watch the stream would think that machine paid out. It didn't. And there were match fixing, right? Esports match fixing. Absolutely wild. Valve clamps down on these guys. Skin gambling websites and influencers get taken to court. They implement trade holds, which is trying to mitigate the secondary market, and they ban a whole lot of bot accounts. Many of these places close up shop. One particular one sticks with it, and they pivot. Specifically, they pivot to the blockchain. They get out of the Steam digital item marketplace, and they pivot to NFTs. We're going to get into that. Key points. Can we trust private entities to self-regulate their own digital marketplaces? Pretty clearly, no. Can we trust the government? No, probably not. They're probably just going to try and get tax revenue from this. Should the markets even be allowed? No idea. That's not what we're talking about. Virtual ownership as a concept is used as a smokescreen for these companies to extract money from players who are basically kind of workers in this point. And there are sure are a lot of people who are getting interested in this blockchain thing.
Oh my God, what is crypto? What is the blockchain? Oh, I think we're going to skip this. I don't think we need to give everyone a little rundown. I think everyone watching this talk is probably familiar. But essentially, it's a really slow, inefficient database. You could probably work out a better way to kind of store this stuff honestly. But basically, a bunch of transactions get stored in a hash. If you tried to change it, it would be very obvious if you did. And people try to come to a consensus over what's that kind of thing. But we're not just doing transactions. We're trying to prove that this blockchain is this incredible revolutionary concept, and we want to impress our investors. So we want to show that we can store all kinds of stuff on this blockchain. We can store tokens and other kind of data, not just transfers. And there's different models on how we want to agree that we can trust that the blockchain is legit, because we can't trust a central bank or government. We can't trust them. So we need to rely on these kind of cryptographic kind of models. And there's a proof of work, which kind of eats up all the graphics cards in the world, makes them solve puzzles over and over again, and use heaps of energy. And there's this proof of stake, which is just this oligarchy, blah blah blah, etc. And there's proof of capacity, which is just a big lottery, but that uses all the hard drives instead of all the graphics cards. So less energy, but still a lot of waste. There's don't ask me about this stuff. But everyone wants to say that you have a wallet and everything is stored on the blockchain, and it's perfect, and this is the future. This is how we want to conduct everything and this is how we want to conduct financial stuff in the future. So basically, to sum up the main points of people that want to shield crypto, it's decentralized. We don't need to trust central banks. We can't trust them anymore. They're going to just cause inflation and ruin the economy. The blockchain is transparent. You can see every transaction that happens on there. Anyone can go look it up. There's no secret crime. You couldn't do any crimes on this thing. It's permanent. You can't change it. It's when you're on there, it's there forever, so that if your house goes down, the blockchain is still there. A node goes down, but there's other nodes will be there to look after it. And it's people trying to sell NFTs as true digital ownership. It's yours, kind of like how we buy licenses for games. You buy an NFT, that's yours. You can do whatever you want with this NFT. And perennial renewables. It's all apparently crypto is already green. That's what I say. So I'll pass over to Jonathan, and he'll explain why that's not the case.
So we are rapidly running out of time, and we do not have time to debunk every single claim out there about crypto. So we're going to cover a couple of them, right? So, so a wallet is an address, right? That's all it is. Nothing's stored in there. People tell you everything's stored on the blockchain. In reality, what happens is items that you own, NFTs, digital items, etc., the only thing stored there is just a lot of people say just a receipt. And it's partly true, right? All of the actual data or the context in which that item exists is off the blockchain. It's somewhere else, right? If I own a digital sword in a digital blockchain game, the sword matters in the context of the game. The game doesn't exist on the blockchain. The game exists on a server somewhere. And we're seeing more and more as far as wallets go. If you just want to jump back to that slide, previous slide, we're seeing more and more where people actually don't even have a private key or a password or a wallet or whatever. They are just logging into these crypto exchanges, and they're shifting all their money around on their behalf. They don't actually own any. Like if that exchange goes down, they own nothing. There's nothing at all. So when people say that it's centralized, is it? No, not really. Like all of these metaverse platforms, if one of those goes down, then all of the content associated with it, gone, unless someone wants to re-implement it. Good luck. That's not going to happen. You don't have the source code. Places hosting NFTs and crypto art and all that stuff. The art is not on the blockchain. The art is on some node somewhere. That goes down, and we've already seen it with crypto art. There are NFTs that are dead links. They link to nothing. All of the exchanges out there are like completely centralized. They're moving money around on their own SQL databases. They try to avoid writing stuff to the blockchain wherever possible because it costs them so much money and it's so slow for them to do. And they're massively unregulated. But the blockchain itself is immutable. It can't be changed. Well, actually, that's again false. In 2019, a massive crypto exchange called Binance decided, well, we've been hacked. We lost a bunch of money, $40 million worth of Bitcoin. We're going to roll back the Bitcoin blockchain. We can do it. Quote from the CEO, to be honest, we can actually do this probably within the next few days. They were totally prepared to roll back this blockchain, this thing that's impossible to change and impossible to hack, and this decentralized thing. But they decided against it because it would probably look bad. And I imagine a couple of people tapped them on the shoulder and said, don't do that. It's really bad. In 2013, Bitcoin developers, along with massive mining pools, actually did roll back the blockchain because it had accidentally forked from a bug in their code. But it's totally possible to change it. Further, in other consensus models like proof of stake, you can just rewrite the past. You can swap the history that's happened with a totally different history, and if all of the other rich people, all of the other stakers in the network decide, yeah, that's how it actually happened, then that's the truth. Next slide. It'll last forever. It's once it's on there, and it stays there for good. Well, there's actually no incentive to archive this stuff. There's no financial incentive for anyone to store the entire blockchain. If a block goes missing, it goes missing, right? And sometimes blocks do go missing. There is a cryptocurrency out there, a blockchain out there that's missing the first 30,000 blocks, and it's still going, and people are still buying money, right? If all of the miners for a blockchain leave, then the blockchain dies. There's over 1,000, over 2,000 maybe, dead blockchains out there. No one's mining them. The data is gone. Next slide. Ownership, right? You control it. Well, yeah, as we said, the receipt is on the blockchain, sure. That points somewhere, and the person who owns the site where it's pointing to, the person who controls that, they kind of own it, really. Just like with the with World of Warcraft and digital items we talked about, ultimately the developers are kind of in control of that thing, right? Like in this case, we could swap it from a box to a poop emoji to a red X emoji, right? It doesn't matter. They can change it, right? If they change it, then your NFT points to that new thing that they've changed it to. Transparency. So, with a wallet on the blockchain, I can look at your wallet, you can look at my wallet, we can look at Bill Gates' wallet, right? But we actually don't know whose wallets they are, right? They're just big hexadecimal strings, right? And we can see the transfers to in and out of those wallets. Well, if I wanted to give you 100 Bitcoins or whatever, right? I could just put 100 Bitcoins into a wallet and then give you the key to that wallet, right? And you could give me the key to your wallet, and we just swap that way. And there's no record of that, and there's no fees associated with that, and there's no anything. It's instant. It totally bypasses the 10+ minute transaction time with these blockchains. And you can tell this is great for money launderers. And in fact, money laundering is now a service on these platforms. This one here is called Tornado Cash. It runs on the Ethereum blockchain. You put Ether in, it completely atomizes it and obliterates it, splits it up, remixes it, and then you take it out a couple of days later to not look suspicious. That's just money laundering, and it's been around from the beginning with Bitcoin. Decentralized applications. These suck. They're so bad. The one I love the most is BitClout, which is like, imagine Twitter if every person on Twitter had a monetary value. You could buy their stock. Except every time you post, it costs you money. Every time you like a post, it costs you money. Every time you update your bio, it costs you money. Because all of this stuff on these platforms is stored on the blockchain, and they don't tell you anything about the fees. So transaction fees on Ethereum are called gas, which is just immensely funny when you think about the environmental cost. Sometimes these fees are like over $100 to do a single transaction. Depends on what the miners decide. There's just immense amounts of fees. Fees everywhere. Gas, fees, and gas. Fees.
Gas.
Hello, Freeplay. I want to play a game. And unfortunately for you, this isn't free to play. There is a cost. A terrible cost. As we speak, the Freeplay zone is beginning to fill with gas. Gas. A sickening, horrible smelling gas. Gas. Just the worst kinds of smells. Yes, I'm looking at the zone right now, and they're all hating it. Hating the gas. Yes. They're waving their hands in front of their noses. Everyone is looking at one another suspiciously. Smelling. It's all very awkward, and indeed, very smelly. The only way to stop the gas is for the live chat, both YouTube chat and zone chat, to spam the word egg in all caps as much as you can. That is the only way to to deactivate and disable the gas. Or you could do nothing and watch as everyone around you suspects you of perpetuating the smelly smells. Smelly. Make your choice.
Just filled with scams. There's like, we've talked for so long about this stuff. It's filled with scams. In fact, in 2018, 75% of initial coin offerings were scams. Crypto art, the tech is fundamentally broken. Stores are filled with stolen art. Power plants are reopening to mine proof of work cryptocurrencies. Crypto moguls, including Brock Pierce, who we've talked about before, are moving to places like Puerto Rico in order to benefit from tax loopholes, like the fact that they don't need to pay US federal income tax on, or capital gains tax on their crypto gains. And there's a larger part of crypto colonialism that's coming up that we didn't have time to get into. There's fractionalized NFTs, tokens representing part of an NFT, which is basically just an unregulated security. There are stable coins, quote unquote, which are backed one-to-one with real money, except it turns out after an investigation into Tether, which is one particular stable coin developed by Brock Pierce, that it wasn't actually backed, and there's about 3% of cash behind the stable coin. We got to get out of this. We got to stop talking about this stuff. The only crypto you want to get your hands on is birdseed.
There's a lot of birds and they all got to eat.
There's a lot of birds and they all got to eat. All right, so here we are today. Hasbro's releasing Magic the Gathering NFTs. I'm not going to talk about that slide. Next one. Yeah. Neopets previously has done NFTs, and Gaia Online is currently doing NFTs to sell their items. Next slide. Funko Pop is doing NFTs on the Wax blockchain, which was developed by the OP Skins company who got out of CSGO offsite trading into the and developed their own blockchain. That's the blockchain that Funko Pops are going to be on, and they're coming in June. DoubleJump.Tokyo is doing NFTs for Sega and Square Enix. Atari, who in the 80s dumped all their stuff in the thing, they're obsessed with ownership now. They're obsessed with pieces of history. They're doing NFTs. They're doing NFTs with a company called Animoca Brands. All right. So this company does sandbox game. They do F1 Delta Time in partnership with the F1. They do MotoGP Ignition in partnership with MotoGP. They do loads of other games as well. They also work in partnership with Atari, like we just saw. They do Shaun the Sheep. Melbourne City Football Club, the A-League team, they're doing NFTs for them. They're doing NFTs for Manchester City Football Club. They're doing NFTs for the International Olympic Committee and loads of others. They're everywhere. What I find interesting about this brand is that they were delisted from the Australian Securities Exchange in March this year. Here's a quote from the Market Herald. Quote, "The exchange called into question Animoca's involvement with cryptocurrency activities and use of simple agreements of future equity safes in its subsidiaries. On top of this, the ASIC says Animoca has struggled to comply with 12 listing rules since January last year, 2020. Safes are basically like the opportunity to buy future shares under specific conditions. Doesn't count as debt, doesn't count as a loan. It's a bit dodgy. ASIC doesn't like it." Anyway, prior to Animoca Brands, and if you could click on the slide for me, they were called Blackfire Minerals. They were a mineral exploration company. They were looking for coal, gold, etc. for mining companies to do that. Very cool. Prior to that, they were called Blackfire Energy, a gas and oil exploration company looking for oil and gas for drilling companies to suck out of the earth. Very, very, very cool. A company that just morphs into whatever they think they can commodify next. Next slide, please. Okay, Zed-Run, NFT horse breeding racing game launched in 2018 by a Melbourne studio called Virtually Human. You can buy a horse and enter it into horse races, cost money to enter the race. There are prizes for winning the race. Right now, the cheapest horse is about $300. You can buy horses in drops from the company. They're controlled by the company, and oftentimes the drops go to the larger, what they call stables, which are organizations of users who ultimately have a lot of money. They spent like $100,000 on this so far. There is Zed-Run right there. It's streaming on Twitch. Really cool, good. Zed-Run have just announced a partnership with a company called Wager. Next slide. Wager is a blockchain betting app and website that is completely unregulated. You buy their own weird little dodgy coin cryptocurrency thing called Wager from dodgy exchanges that don't check your ID. The app itself doesn't check your ID. You can just buy this currency, go onto their app and start betting on the fake horses. And also because it's a blockchain sportsbook app, you can also bet on real horses in the same app as well. Crypto and gambling are in the same universe. They're all there. Let's move on to Twitch because we just saw Zedrun was broadcasting on Twitch. Twitch has no issues with people streaming digital horse races. They don't care about people streaming slot machines either. Gamers don't care about that, but they do care about ladies being on there in hot tubs and stuff. I've read their policies and their terms of service, all of it. They have no issues with Twitch streaming, with people streaming this stuff. Let's have a look at the content here. Slots at that time had 47.8 thousand viewers. 47.8 thousand. Oh my god, they have 7,000 followers. The slots category, more than double the hot tubs category. So I don't know what the big deal there was. They have half the viewers of Fortnite. The peak in the last 30 days was 204,000 viewers of the slots channel. Anyway, time to check the slots. Okay, hot tub. That's good. I think that's fine. That's okay. Let's go back to check some other categories. Back to crypto. Okay, so Axie Infinity, NFT creature battle game. Next slide, please, Andy. You buy 3 Axies to form a team. Each Axie, the cheapest ones are around $100. They call it a play to earn game. It's partnered with Samsung and Ubisoft. Ubisoft are doing blockchain transactions for them. Here's what it looks like. Next slide. You buy this thing called previous slide. You buy this thing called Smooth Love you earn this thing called Smooth Love Potion, which is a commodity. It's tracked just like a cryptocurrency, but it's a token. Anyway, whatever. It's used to breed Axies. It's used by Axie breeders and farmed by Axie farmers. Okay, so $300 outlay to buy these things, but that's fine. Next slide. Don't worry, people have you covered. Axie scholarships. Groups who own Axies will give you control of them. They'll take 65% of you keep 65% of what you earn, you give the rest to them. You got to hit weekly and monthly targets. On average, people who are playing these scholarships earn about $15 a day. This is really big in the Philippines right now, especially given the pandemic. People are shifting to this. I don't think I need to say that it's a massive issue that a company is in control of these people's incomes and they aren't actually contractors. Okay, that's the stuff that's really happening. Now the stuff that's maybe gonna happen. It's technically possible. I'll point out the stuff that's actually sort of real as we go. All right, skip to the no more PCs slide. PC hardware becomes absurdly expensive.
Wait, where's that?
Yep, one after one. That one. Yep.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
CPUs and GPUs become immensely expensive due to proof of work algorithms. This is happening. GPU shortage is happening. It's real. Hard drives become immensely expensive due to proof of capacity consensus algorithms. This is happening with Chia. RAM becomes immensely expensive due to distributed applications, RAM speculation, etc. This is happening with EOS.io, which is a protocol developed by Block One, which is a company started by Brock Pierce. The industry shifts to low-end hardware since that's what people can afford. You sell people system-on-a-chip devices, phones, and tablets. That's it. So everything then shifts to streaming. Next slide. Games are no longer installed. They're licenses to stream. So Steam launches their own little Steam Cloud Play thing or whatever. Legacy games are converted where the existing license allows. Otherwise, they just get rid of them and you offer a credit. Maybe it costs like $15 a month. You can purchase one license. You can purchase one game or stream license per month, or you can pay the $15. This is happening. Steam is doing this Steam Cloud Play thing, not the monthly fee stuff or whatever. It's currently in beta. It uses NVIDIA's platform. I assume that it's currently opt-in, which means that it'll eventually be opt-out, which will eventually mean that you won't have an option. This is where it's going to be. I was curious about that, so I googled it. Next slide. Already, developers don't know that their games are being streamed without their permission. Steam is in control of this. Next slide. Games as NFTs. Video game licenses are represented by NFTs. I wrote this slide before all of this stuff kicked off. GameStop becomes a major NFT marketplace. They sell video games, video game collectibles, Funko Pops, all that sort of stuff. GameStop and the studios get a cut from the secondary market now. Pre-owned video games become vessels for money laundering, naturally. Again, this is happening. GameStop are doing NFTs. Next slide. Gig Economy 2.0. Workers earn peanuts. You craft and sell peanut butter for peanut bucks. You spend the peanut bucks on transactions with other players in the metaverse, virtual pets, pay off your peanut loan. The peanut loan you took out to buy a peanut amulet. Peanut amulet is the thing that lets you perform tasks for other players in the decentralized metaverse experience made by Peanut, co-started by Brock Pierce. Again, this is fake. Next slide.
Not true.
Oh no, the peanut exchange was hacked. The peanut exchange where they stored all the peanut amulets. It's fine because another metaverse company's just announced egg amulets, but they've sold out. So you can sign up for an egg scholarship and earn 65% of the ed bucks that you make from selling your fried egg that you craft because you still need to pay off the peanut loan. I don't like this, and neither do we. We don't like it. So
No.
what do? Don't do this stuff. You don't have to say this is coming. We have to do it. We have to get in early. FOMO, whatever. That's a lie. You don't have to do it, and you can push back. Stipulate in your contracts when you do work that your work cannot be used for crypto or NFTs. Make your work accessible to as many people as you possibly can, except as an NFT, through as many channels as possible, except through the NFT ones. Think about the future. Be aware of who controls access to your work. We saw this before with Apple going 32-bit apps are gone, right? Like platforms like Roblox. If Roblox decide to remove your game or to put up paywalls or barriers or whatever, like your work is now subject to that. They are the gatekeepers to your work. Next slide. For the hypothetical person who wants to debate me, fine. Here we go. I'm going to debate you. I'm just a small little goblin. You win. I don't want to debate you. We're done. There's like 100 slides to this talk. No debates. All right. What are we doing about this? What are we doing? What are you doing? Are you making things for people like you, like not just people like you, but not just people right now, but people in general? Are you making financial instruments for technology gremlins? Like, are you making content designed to keep kids on a platform to be monetized just like you were? Next slide. And next slide.
Life isn't just about passing on your genes. We can leave behind much more than just DNA. Through speech, music, literature, and movies, what we've seen, heard, felt, anger, joy, and sorrow. These are the things I will pass on. That's what I live for. We need to pass the torch and let our children read our messy and sad history by its light. We have all the magic of the digital age to do that with. The human race will probably come to an end sometime, and new species may rule over this planet. Earth may not be forever, but we still have the responsibility to leave what traces of life we can. Building the future and keeping the past alive are one and the same thing.
That's it. Oh, thank you, everyone, and thank you
everyone.
to everyone listed here in varying degrees. Especially massive thank you to the Zone crew, Cecile, Jade. You did amazing work, I'm sure.
Oh. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming to our talk. Thanks for sticking through it. Thanks to everyone in the zone. And yeah, thank you, everyone. That's really what I have to say. That was a whole lot of fun. Shout outs to Saul. Saul says thanks. Jigsaw says thank you. And yep, that's it. Where's Chad? See you later.